Good day, everyone. It's March 9th, and today I'm taking the opportunity to speak a little bit about the Loving Society project. The year is 2022, and we're on version 9.67. So there's been a lot of changes that have happened for the Loving Society since it reemerged as a topic of interest among the Light Bearers Association of Canada. I'm very thankful to the members there that have done a lot to help encourage the use and participation in this project to create a more loving society as is intended. So today, my name is Joseph McDonald. I created this project, this Loving Society project, in 2020, just before March. And I went through a bunch of revisions at that time, and I just didn't have it completely where I wanted it. I still don't have it completely where I want it, but it is quite a bit further along. My background is as a consultant. I have two consultant companies, Joe Company Consulting, Love Profit Consulting, and I also own a moving business, Movers and Shakers, based out of Barrie, Ontario. If you can utilize any of these services, I also have a clean water initiative where I bring people clean water and I'm trying to provide clean water security for people around the world. Um, so if you have an interest in any of these, please do consider reaching out, supporting. It would mean the world for me. Anyway, getting into the Loving Society. So I hope that you have this document in front of you because it'll be a lot easier for you to follow along. I'm just going to follow the guideline uh, that is put in place through the table of contents and the order of items. So starting at the top, of course, we have a table of contents. It goes through the vows, the rights, some of the supporting elements on the top, and supporting examples through the bottom. So the intention of this project was really to create a simple version of heaven on earth, simplified laws, simplified rules for a society that could be easily understood without complicated, acts and measures and whatever. I'm sure the book of law, if you include common law, would be, 10,000 pages per country easily. Um, I felt that was completely ridiculous and unnecessary. How could anyone spend the time to know all of these laws when we could break it down into morality and go from there with a real simple method that's easily understood? You don't even have to speak the same language, and you could still get away with this kind of constitution because it brings it down to the simplest elements. And so, like I mentioned, this is created based on what I meditated on from heaven, what I envision heaven to be like: simplified, beautiful, unconditional love for everybody. And that's really what this society is doing. It's creating that opportunity for people. Before we get into that, though, um, these are some figures, desired figures that Loving Society would push for. So there's a bunch of matters of concern I bring up. I don't want to go through all of them right now because, they're quite disturbing and whatever, but um, these numbers were taken in 2020 from a variety of sources. They discuss the problem that Loving Society really wishes to address and wishes to overcome. That we shouldn't live in a world with such terrible things going on. One third of the world doesn't have clean water. Like, that's quite ridiculous when we look at the global military budget as almost $2 trillion, and that's taken from like 2018 figures. So you can only imagine how further this divide is between the lower um, economic classes and those that believe they deserve control of the resources. So humanity has a lot of opportunity to grow and do better, and I can't wait to see that happen. So getting into it a little bit, micro gifts. So originally it was called micro debts, but basically this is a system of bartering and exchange that eliminates the need for any third-party currency. So basically you find a point of reference that you want to use as that middle ground. So some of the examples would be like, uh, 12 eggs is worth one carton of milk, stuff like that, where it's really easy. Um, you can use it with services as well. I've used this with my clients where I put in 3 hours of consulting work and they give me a comprehensive massage, for example. And you can see where by taking out money and taking out third-party currencies and acknowledgments, you put a lot more value into your time and services, your products, outside of um, theft and taxation. So, wouldn't it be beautiful if we could all go through the world exchanging without being stolen from? Wouldn't that be great? Every time you pay a dollar or you use a dollar, you get a dollar, you're putting value into that dollar, even though those that created that dollar are creating more of those dollars, which is further decreasing your buying power with that dollar. So modern fiat currency is a lose-lose situation for a lot of people, and I look to eliminate that, and I do that with micro gifts. And this is something you can bring into your real life right now, starting to use it with people. Um, Basically, it's bartering system with a little bit more accounting in simple terms. Not that I'm a huge fan of accounting either, but I do have a background in it, so for me it's not too difficult to understand and utilize. This society would use a pure democracy as well as an informed democracy. So what this would do is eliminate modern political systems, which are easily corruptible by their very nature. This would take control from financial groups and put it in the opportunity of individuals who want to vote on certain topics. The topic of COVID, for example, has had a lot of interest from a lot of different people. And how many times in the last year have people sent me CNN polls that showed massive support for the freedoms and rights instilled in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada? You know, wouldn't it be great if the whole COVID thing could be facilitated through a pure democratic nation rather than an elected democratic nation? I also brought up the term informed democracy. Informed democracy basically gives grounds where when you get into a technical issue like building a bridge, the person that actually knows how to build the bridge gets a larger say. How that would be done mathematically is, to be determined. But you can imagine a bridge builder might have better knowledge of how and why to do a bridge a certain way compared to people that are just trying to say, hey, let's get a bridge. So moving forward, we're talking about mere conflicts. So this society very much wants to mirror or minimize any kind of conflicts. And so the base example is if you come at me with a sword, I can use a sword to protect myself, and that's a-okay. It wouldn't be right for me to pull out a gun and shoot you because you're coming at me with a sword. The idea is that people don't need to move up. Um, oh, you got a tank, I got a nuke. Like, no, if we're truly loving beings, we can talk our way through situations. We can give people opportunities to use words rather than violence to get through their problems. And so we have a lot of opportunity moving forward as a more enlightened society to move beyond escalating violence. There's so many movies and cop shows and stuff like that, where one guy's got a gun and then there's just 10 snipers and whatever. And it just doesn't seem like it really resolves the issue. I mean, if that's the script people want to play, they can play that script. But I really want to advocate reform in the way that we deal with conflicts, bring them down rather than moving them up. Um, this is the same way people would redeem their good standing in this society as well. Whatever amount of harm you did, you redeem from that point so that nobody is beyond redemption. I mean, more serious crimes are a different matter, but through pure democracy and through love, transparency, there's a variety of solutions. The worst of which, obviously, being banishment and capital punishment. This society is considering different teachings from Viking culture and other cultures related to slavery as a form of punishment for crimes. I don't like slavery. I'm really against slavery. But for fairly severe crimes where redemption is very hard to get, there is reason to consider slavery. Slaves would still obviously have full or semi-full rights, but that is a pure community basis situation. So I'm not going to go over the examples too much here. Going right into the Constitution. Constitution being a foundation of ideas, guidance for a community. We have three that would govern all public affairs, business, government, and other groups, with two or three or more people in a public space. That is the vow of love. That's unconditional love, of course. The vow of transparency, and the vow of cooperation. For individuals and their immediate family, there's three protected rights: the right of equity, the right of privacy, and the right of freedom. I'm just going to get into these a little bit right now. The vow of love states that all acts be governed by love. If an action is governed by greed, the act is unwelcome, discouraged, and or against the vow of love. Only acts that are permissible and understood as loving from all sides are to be present in a public setting. And what this does is it takes greed and it flips it upside down and says, you want to be in charge, you got to love and care for everybody. You can't just, love and care for your supporters. I know this seems like a crazy idea to some, but because it's a vow, it's not a law. It's something that you have to take, not something forced upon you. And so if people continue to move into greater enlightenment, greater wisdom and peace and love, they can take this opportunity to be better. And when enough people have taken that opportunity to be better, we're all better. And moving on to the vow of transparency. So the vow of transparency basically says everything is public. When it comes to the public, it's public. So libraries, science labs, doctors' facilities. Like obviously, we're going to get into the right of privacy, so that would protect an individual, but it would not protect a doctor from his research. So his research would be public. His general analytics would be public. His methodology, public. Individual clients and patients, private. And so what this vow really does is it opens up public officials from secret deals, from secret dealings, from secret society influence. It really says, why are you doing it this way? And it puts it on the table and it makes it clear for everybody. So there's no lying, there's no hiding, and there's no room for corruption, or at least far less than there is now. The vow of cooperation basically acts as a means to make everything accessible for your influence. And what I mean by that is that if you're building a bridge, I can come up and say, hey, I want to help. And, maybe there's no room for me to help, but as much accommodation would be made possible for me to assist. Oh, you're voting on, something and I want to contribute. Well, the vow of cooperation says that I can contribute. There is examples where it talks about qualifications, but they would be much more easy to meet and move forward with than they are today. And I think that gives a lot of room for people to move forward in a loving, cooperative, transparent society. Again, this is a vow. People don't have to take this, but as I live my life by these vows, I can tell you anything I do in business is transparent, and I'm more than open to your help and cooperation with everything I do. So feel free to come and say, hey, I want to be a mover. And I'd be like, that's great. Let's try to get you in. Obviously, we're still limited by economics at the moment in a public space because these have not overcome modern society. but one day they very well could. You can see tons of examples on the vow of cooperation talking about liability and stuff like that. Please read at your interest. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. So the first right is the right of equity. A lot of people don't understand what equity means. Equity is basically your ability to create capital or to create an empire in another way or a home. So this is your ability to stand as an individual and say, I did that, and this is mine. You do have the opportunity to own the right to what you've done, your work, your history, and this is protected through the right of equity. A right of privacy says, you do whatever you want in your own home, so long as you're not affecting the public, you're good to go. So go nuts. You want to have weird, you know, sex parties? That's your business. Um, if it becomes, more than two or three people, then it might be a transparent sex party. But no, the idea, the intention of it is very much to give people an opportunity to be self-sustained, self-involved, without overbearing public measures. So in modern times, there's been a lot of resistance to self-sustainable off-grid living. This society says, please feel free to do it on your own because that's beautiful. That's wonderful. You are protected through the right of privacy. We don't want to come in there. Much the same with the right of freedom. If it pertains to you and your family and your small, household, go nuts. Do what you want to do. If you want to use drugs, go for it. As long as it's not hurting the public, you're good to go. So have at it. And because the society is really based on the idea of giving people a minimum level of wealth, like basic food and a place to stay without enslavement or taxation, if someone wants to be lazy, they can be lazy. If someone needs to heal, they can heal. This society does not push people to the curb, much like modern society. Society really tries to give everyone a minimum level of value in a community, and so people can be raised up. Lots of examples there. Unused things are free across the board, so no waste exists in this society. So dumps, for example, would be much more inclined to be recycling items. There's no rapid commercialization and production going on in this society. So things are recycled as much as possible through and through. We minimize logistical waste in modern society. There's tons of logistical waste. There's tons of waste in general created, and that's through corruption. The people that think they own the world create a lot of value for themselves through the waste. There's no one winning from waste in this society. So um, people that are hardworking and effective, really get ahead. Those that recycle really well get ahead. Um, people are, though, still governed to that, minimum level by the leaders in their community. So I can imagine, tiny home production being done at our local dumps. I don't see why that would be so difficult. I don't see why shipping container homes shouldn't be, something everyone can have. Um, Especially as you see how much stuff we all have in storage. It's like storage is great, but we don't need this much stuff. It's not being used. It hasn't been used in years. Let's give it to somebody who needs it, wants it, deserves it. Perfect. No waste. Lots of recycling, lots of love. That's what we want to see. So technological realities. A lot of people in the know can mention that they have seen a lot of technology go hidden or taken from public space. Nikola Tesla's technologies, free energy, cars that run on water, stuff like that. All these beautiful things, they are made transparent. There's no hiding them anymore. They're gifted to the world, everyone can learn and develop these technologies and use them. That's the beautiful thing about a free world. Spiritual realities would become more apparent. Reincarnation is something that's really important and I think does a great job for developing morality of individuals. Now that you know that you've been the other race, the other gender, you've been rich, you've been poor, you've done bad, you've done good. These are things that should make you better people. And I think it's really important that we look at that and move forward with that. There's a lot of beautiful spiritual truths that are coming more apparent in modern society, but sooner or later we're going to get to a tipping point, and they are going to be more a part of public culture, and that's important for this society to be aware of. Media, um, media would be far less biased, far less corrupt. Everybody is biased. Media will always be some degree of bias, but through the vow of transparency and cooperation, there'll be a lot better media, and it'd be a lot more about growing and healing than about marginalizing and pushing political gains and divide and conquer as it is now. Universal truths would be brought out. I mean, we can see them, they're coming on. Taxes would be paid under zero obligation. So what this means is I'm rich, I did well, I, own all these businesses, whatever, in this society. I can decide what my taxes would go into. Oh, I have 3 kids and they're growing up. All right, well, I want to put a bunch of my money and value into a school. Oh, we don't have a school. All right, I'm building a school. That's my taxes. This system, allows people to contribute what they have to what they want to contribute to under zero obligation. They could put it on the public record and, have it available for others to see what they're doing transparently, giving others an opportunity to see what needs to be built and contributed to. But yeah, I think it'd be really exciting to see a tax-free, zero obligation system where people who are rich can contribute more, people that aren't so rich can contribute less. And I think that that would be a beautiful system. A lot of people might say, hey, the rich people are already not contributing enough. Well, under this society, they would be positioned to, in every sense of the word. Because if people aren't abiding by the vows, and they're in a community that does, they get positioned as individuals to be spoken with and to be petitioned and worked around, as you can see in some of the examples, especially related to transparency and cooperation. Check them out. So no military. This society would have a militia or a gun club, which would work as a militia as needed. There's no war in a society where everyone's fed and has a home and has water. So I don't think we will have war in the future if the leaders are loving and blessed as they once were and will be again. Doctors would be more formally referred to as healers rather than drug dealers. Police would not have gun, they would be investigators, and they would de-escalate violence. They wouldn't actively participate in violence. You can imagine more like a Sherlock Holmes type. That would be more the police in this society, digging up the evidence rather than causing, other situations to occur. Guns get involved, call a gun club. Bing, bang, boom. All right, as soon as someone has one gun, all right, there we go. We have a reason for that person to not want to participate in violence because they don't want to deal with the gun club. Lawyers. Lawyers would be minimized into an informal common law based on the new standardized constitution of love as the highest vow. Firefighters would work pretty much the same as modern time, funding coming from voluntary taxation, and people would be more responsible for themselves. I speak about the Chicago fire, and we can really look at how that could have been taken care of beforehand, midway, and at the end of it. prisons would be repurposed more or less. Technology would be optional in infrastructure. So you want to live, you know, in the 1800s style of technology, you go ahead. You don't need, um, because of the law of freedom, or the right of freedom, sorry, and the right of privacy, you don't need to integrate into a technological world. You can stay in whatever year you want. That's cool by us. Um, Severe criminals would be given options depending on the specific society and the specific instances. Banishment might be an option. Capital punishment might be an option. Um, but in most cases, reform would be the desired method. And as I think about it more and more, it does look like a form of slavery where it's like, oh, you contaminated the water. Now you got to clean the water for this amount of time. Well, you would be audited to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That could be seen as a form of slavery. Um, but obviously, this project still has room to grow and move forward. Um, Migration. So there's really no borders. There might be specific junctions where people would keep an eye on the movement of people, to be transparent about population fluxes and where people would be better situated to go. But there's no real restriction. It's more or less, where are you going? Why are you going there? And then there might be a reporting station that say, hey, there's some people coming looking for a place to stay. You know, what community needs people? What community needs, plumbers or farmers or whatever? And so society would really work that way, where it's like, where are we needed? Where do you want to go? Find the balance in between. Libraries, as I mentioned here, are one of the few things in modern society I think are doing pretty good. My local library in Angus is a place that really impressed me for the most part. It rents out things like kitchen appliances, gardening tools. Moving into the future, it would be a hub of public assets. So a community might have, a backhoe or a crane, those kind of things. Obviously, you'd want to demonstrate that you know how to use them, and there might be qualified people in the community better able to help you use them. But they would be public assets, and therefore you could be qualified to rent them from the library. You could rent a car or borrow bikes, stuff like that. Fire trucks would probably hang out by the library or the community lot, whatever. Um, this is a great way to centralize a lot of community assets, and then when somebody moves to town, they're like, oh, I need a dresser. Well, you'll know where to look. The recycling and the library. So I think that's really awesome. Your public records could move from location to location. Libraries would probably act as the hub for administration of public records. Um, Implementation. So this is new on this version from prior version. So I'm really excited to mention. So implementation on a small scale is about individuals taking the vows and starting to live by them. So I've taken the vows of love, cooperation, transparency, and so I live this way. I don't lie. Put it on the table. Here it is. I'm going to love you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to do my best to always be there for you with these wonderful morals. I use micro gifts as much as I can. And this is where I'm trying to take the world. And so, in a small scale, other individuals can take these vows as well. And now we're creating this little community, a loving society community, the neighbors, friends, associates, business people, whatever. This is how it really starts, and this is how it really moves forward. Implementing it on a larger scale would be bringing it from the higher point of a group. So, say you had a group of 50 people, and it was voted in that you were taking on this loving society, or better yet, a community. If you had a commune of 50 people, and it was voted in that you were going to take on this loving society, then, all those that voted for it would be implied to taking the vows, and no one would be ever forced to take on the vows unless they were in a public space, unless they were a public official, unless they had 20 cars and, then there would be an opportunity um, for, hey, you need to share your toys. But for humble people without significant equity, um, there is no obligation to take the vows. You get there when you're ready. It's only those that are not using their resources to help the community properly that would be more or less obligated into taking the vows. So you can look at it from families' perspectives, like I mentioned, wherever it's valuable, that's where it needs to be. Getting closer to the end, how to deal with scaling communities. So I go into an example here, but basically it's find out what you need transparently, cooperatively, democratically, and seek to trade for it, seek to acquire it through a variety of means. Obviously, none of those being unethical, but when enough people put their minds to it, they can achieve anything, and I think that's a beautiful thing. In closing, 3 vows and 3 rights: love, transparency, cooperation, equity, privacy, and freedom. I think this is all we need, and I'm very excited to have worked with wonderful people on this project, and I continue to look forward to working with many more. And as society continues to shift into this higher consciousness, this kind of project might come out to the forefront, and I'll be very excited to see that, as I can't wait to see people no longer enslaved and no longer marginalized, and I can't wait for everyone to have the same rights and freedoms that God intended. I really appreciate your time. Again, my name is Joseph McDonald from the Loving Society, or sorry, creator of the Loving Society Project. Please feel free to adapt this any way you want. I'm from Love Profit Consulting, Joe Company Consulting, Movers and Shakers, and I have a Clean Water Initiative. I'm a chair on the Light Bearers Association of Canada, and I'd love to connect with you anywhere you can, any way you want. Let's do this. Let's get together. Let's create this new world, one step at a time, one conversation at a time. Let's bring in more love. Thank you. God bless. Have a wonderful day.